Yousef, I would like to start with your comment on this sudden decline of the oil price. Are you surprised by it, considering the fact that the coronavirus outbreak in China is kind of getting better? It's not the same situation for Europe, but at least for China it's getting better.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if the situation in China is getting better because certainly it's not as worse as before, but the risk is still apparent. And as you can see, the main concern for the oil market has not just been really the improvement in China, but it's actually the outreach of the virus beyond the Chinese borders. It is now, and there is a case actually virtually in most of the Asian continents, and as you know, it's already in Europe, and that has been the concerns that is pressuring the prices over the past week. So possibly the situation improving in China. We hope that the no more cases will happen, and then the cases will peak and then start to decline. But the markets need to have more certainty about that, and I believe that's the main issue currently we're seeing in the market. Certainly, it's not just about China. Just the past couple of days, as you see, the price of dollars have been strengthening, and that has pushed actually prices down. But later today, there's been some bullish data coming from the EIA, which has pushed WTI above a $50 a barrel, and I believe now the most important thing that the market is waiting for is the OPEC Plus meeting next week. And if there is a decision on to deepen the cuts from OPEC Plus, then I believe that would certainly support prices, especially moving to Q2 in 2020.
Exactly. Talking about OPEC, this is what I was about to ask you last time. Russia certainly did not agree with, of course, the output cuts that were proposed by Saudi Arabia. Do you believe this now, after a few months already, that we do see this crisis of the energy market is the worst performer also on the S&P 500 among the 11 sectors of S&P 500? So do you believe Russians would have changed their mind or not yet?
There has not been a formal statement from Russia on not to agree on the proposed cuts from OPEC yet. There's been statements on that they are willing to cooperate, and they are in support of the OPEC Plus agreement and its objectives. But there's not been a formal statement on agreeing on the cuts. I agree with you. I believe if the situation continues to deteriorate, and as I'm quoting here the Russian energy minister, who has said that we need to assess the situation. So if the situation continues to deteriorate the market, certainly I think that the Russians could ultimately come on the table and agree on a deeper cuts. I heard some reports from Platts and Reuters that there are some proposed joint cuts from the Gulf, some of the Arab Gulf countries, and so that makes me a bit more confident that in the meeting we are going to see a cut of maybe 500,000 barrels or more next week.
Well, that's pretty interesting and very insightful, by the way, Yousef. As always, you have some, how can I say, interesting information to share. What kind of price range can we expect in this period, considering the fact that any output cut output cut is still not happening?
Let's see, because there are two scenarios now. Scenario one, that there will be a deeper cut, and I believe that could, provided that Corona doesn't get any worse than that, I believe we could see WTI trading at about $55 a barrel in Q2 and moving towards the second half of 2020. If the worst case, if there are no cuts, then I believe the WTI could go below $50, moving down to about $45, moving in the second half of 2020. These are the price ranges that we are putting in our scenarios. That's and that the corona impact continues to spread throughout the Q2 and the Q3 in 2020. And we are putting a scenario that the situation could improve and Chinese economic activity comes back to normal in Q4. And by that time, we could see WTI coming back to above $50. And assuming that under that scenario that the cuts of OPEC have not happened yet. So these are the scenarios we are putting until now.
Another thing I would like to know is the fact that how important is the coronavirus for oil prices if we put aside China, because the outbreak in China is diminishing, but the global outbreak is increasing. We saw some cases in Iran, one case in Israel. First of all, what's the situation in Saudi Arabia, which is certainly crucial for the OPEC and, of course, for the oil market, no doubt about it. And secondly, how concerning is the coronavirus itself for the crude oil price?
As you said, there's currently now a corona case in many countries around the world. In the Middle East, the most country that was hit by corona, I believe, was Iran. In the Gulf Arab countries, there has been several cases in Bahrain. In Saudi Arabia, there's no formal case reported yet. And I believe there are some cases in Emirates that have already recovered. That's from talking about from a health perspective, but from an economic perspective, I believe the most country that has got an economic hit from coronavirus will be China, because that's where more than 30,000, actually, in fact, it's 60,000, more than 60,000 cases were reported, and that's where most of the industrial activities were actually halted. And even if you look at the demand for oil, most of the growth in demand from oil, about 50%, comes from China. So I believe the impact on oil markets will come actually from China. The other cases where we've been reported cases on corona in East Asia or either in Europe, from our own perspective, we don't think that they will really have an impact on oil demand, because we have not really seen a major industrial, or let's say, reduced industrial activities in these countries.
All right. Thank you very much, Yousef Alshammari, Editor-in-Chief, C Markets. Thank you for joining us, and have a great evening.
Always a pleasure, Alexandra. Have a great evening. You too.
Well, we're heading for a very short commercial break, but stick around because up next is chart analysis and forex analysis.